Thank you, Bob. Chuck, you're not on anything? Were you on something? Aren't you?
Chuck Gordon, Kids ID.
Oh, Kids ID.
He's the president.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not on the park board anymore.
Oh, see,
I'm on the
I'm a
Chamber of
senior.
Commerce director. I'm a range director. I'm also a member of the North Highlands Optimist Club. I'm a director on there too.
Does that sound okay? Sure. Okay, first of all, I want you to know that we are working hard to review all the TOT grants. Is there anyone in here who had applied for one of the economic development grants? Okay, several.
Yeah, me.
Okay. And what we're doing is we have so many more than there's money. And so we're kind of reviewing those applications. There will be. Did anyone watch the meeting this week? No. Okay, so this is news. Okay. I get to share. There were some more of a collaborative effort to try to have that conversation around what is your situation in your local areas, what can we work on together to, how can we share our successes and our failures and that kind of stuff. And so it's one of those, it's a big step. I think a big part of it has to do with the state is basically handing money down. The money that comes from the state usually has conditions on the money. So what they'll do is they'll say, we'll give you this, but you have to have, you have to do this, that, and that with the money, and you have to report back this, that, and that way, and you have to spend it in this period of time on these kinds of things. So they'll put the conditions to make sure we're doing it the way they want us to do it. And now the new one of the new rules that they've basically placed is they want to see us working together collaboratively, and they want us to have a collaborative plan. So it's probably going to be 3 meetings a year. It's not, and I'll be reporting back to you on what I learn about the different jurisdictions and how that's going. Another thing that we talked about was an emergency eviction notice, emergency eviction ordinance. And I don't know if you were aware, but the state rent control policy that is going to go into effect in January 2020. And most of you probably know I'm a person who did not support rent control. The reason I don't support rent control is because it doesn't work. I've read a lot of articles from economists who have talked about relations. Well, one meeting ago, there were a couple of people who came into the board chambers, and they stated that they had received like one complex, the Bell Apartments, I think in District 3, I think it's Carmichael area or somewhere around there, had received these eviction notices, and people were going to end up being homeless. And so this is something that Supervisor Peters and the Sacramento County DHA and Sacramento Redevelopment Agency and the California Apartment Association have been working closely with the landlord to try to figure out how they can negotiate for the owner of the property to help these people with some kind of stipend or something that would help them get into transition out since he's evicting them. And they've also been trying to help them find places. As of the meeting on Tuesday, Supervisor Peters reported, which was really, and also Lachelle Dozier, who's the director at SHRA, had indicated that all of the folks who had been at the Bell Apartments, I think except for 2, is that right, Mel?
I'm not sure the number. I don't know all the details.
There were, I think, two people who they were still working with to make sure they got situated okay. So the short of it is that one of the supervisors requested that we do this emergency moratorium on evictions, which would go back. The staff report said it's not retroactive, but it would apply to anyone who was served an eviction notice and it was still in process. They weren't out, an eviction notice is usually a 90-day notice or something like that. So it does go back to those that are in the process that haven't frequently, who came out to testify for the passage of the ordinance. And I did not support the emergency ordinance. The biggest reason I didn't support it was because I really felt like I was fighting for renters. If for some reason, at the end of the day, if the rents don't cover the costs, there is a loophole in the new that's going to take effect in January that says that an owner of a property can change the use of that property and they can evict everyone all at once. So you could have, if for some reason landlords are not able to situate themselves in a way that they have a sustainable business. Has anyone here ever been self-employed? Okay.
Wait, why exactly are these people getting evicted? Are they getting evicted because of this rule, or are they getting evicted because they're not paying rent?
The emergency eviction ordinance is all around no fault. Okay, so the people that, in this case, at those apartments that were being evicted were not being, it was a no fault eviction, but it was not because of I don't believe it was because of the rent control policy as much as it was just a matter of the fiduciary, a son of two parents who were older, and they had been managing this property, but they hadn't raised the rent, so the rent, it was way under market with the rents. It was dilapidated. He was trying to, maximize. He was trying to figure out how to. He had a buyer. He was trying to figure out how to get the rents back to market and figure out how to put money back into the property so he could sell it, okay? So the emergency eviction ordinance relates to no fault. So what that means is if they didn't do something wrong, you just changed what you want to do with the property. You decided you wanted to maybe pull them out so that you can remodel the property, or you want to change the use of the property or whatever.
If you evict one tenant and bring in a new one, then can you raise the rent? Is that why maybe they were doing it?
Yeah, I think that was
a new renter would have a new rent.
In this case, there wasn't anything illegal about that owner was doing. It was just the timing was really tough and the fact that the property was so far below market. When you have a property like that and people then go out and try and find another place, sometimes it's hard to find something with comparable rents because it's so far below. That's and then on top of that, what happens when you set a cap on rents and then you have an ongoing cap of how much more people can charge. You pass a law like that, then everyone's jockeying to try to figure out how they can manage that business plan at that property. Having rental properties is like a business. You have to bring in as much as you spend, and so I think it's probably a matter of that. In one case, I know one person who owns apartments, who owns thousands of apartments. They have never evicted anyone, but they do cash for keys. And what they do is they pay people $4,000 plus 1 month's rent. Then they give them an option. If you want this, we'll give you this. If you'll move out, we can try and move you to another unit in the complex until your unit is fixed up. And then when it's fixed up, we'll put you back in there at a little higher rent. Or we can give you this money and we can get you situated in another apartment somewhere else. You could have, thousands of people being evicted. So I didn't feel that it was necessary. I felt like we could help, we definitely are going to help those people. We don't want them to be homeless. And so anyway, there was a big thing about that, and you'll probably see something in the news in the next couple days around that.
Did you tell them that they aren't getting money?
Oh, and yes, Supervisor Peters did an amazing job. She went to the California Apartment Association, and they met with the owner and negotiated $2,500 for every single tenant, plus, I think, plus
Their security deposit.
their deposit, and they're helping them find other units, and we're connecting them with vouchers so that they can get assistance, rental assistance, and put them in other places. So I think it's going to be fine, and they're going to be fine. At the end of the day, you know, rent control, what happens with rent control is they put a cap. If you put a cap on what you can charge for rent, then that impacts how an investor looks at that property. When an investor goes to buy a rental property, it's based on, you know, the value and the income they can get and the costs that they're going to have to put out to maintain it and the net income that they can achieve. And if those numbers don't work out, then it's not sustainable. It's not a good investment. And so when you put a cap on what people can pay for rent, sometimes if they don't have as much money, they don't have as much money to keep up with the maintenance on the property. If they're thinking about whether or not they're going to buy more of those investment properties, they might think, no, I think I'll buy another kind of investment, or I'll go somewhere else where they're not going to cap my, you know, where they're going to take away my flexibility to manage as the markets change. And what ends up happening in the end generally is you have less units available. In Sacramento County, we have 44% of the people in Sacramento County are tenants, and that may be emergency moratorium on evictions, and the reason I did it was for the renters, really, because we want to make sure that we can keep those rental units going.
Is there going to be people working to repeal this, to turn it back around?
Well, it was kind of one of those things where if we did an emergency ordinance, then it could go into effect immediately. It would only be good through the end of the year, so it was just for a short period of time, and it would only impact people who had received their, you know, it was like a 70-day period that it actually covered, and as of the first of the year, the rent control will go into effect, and so it won't mean anything because that law will go into effect. And so we could go back and revisit it, not as an emergency ordinance, and I don't think that will happen, but it's not likely that will happen because it would need a 3-2 vote, and we probably won't. One of our supervisors might not be there, so I'm not sure it'll come back. I don't know if it'll come back.
So is this statewide or is it county?
No, this is just county. This was just for the unincorporated county.
Is this the county's way of trying to turn around what Newsom created with us being able to build a little backyard bungalow, 100,000 square feet with for people homeless to come in and be able to rent at a lower cost than a full-blown type of apartment scenario?
No, this is the state law that went into effect about the ADUs is still in they've actually updated, and there's some new rules going down at the state level, which I learned about a week ago, and it was actually really good. It was kind of expanding the ADU and putting more flexibility in that for people, and I've already notified our county staff to make sure county is aligned with that, because it's going to give a little bit more flexibility for what people can do and make it a little easier to have one of those ADUs in their backyard. And also,
but the county's taken away my opportunity to raise my rents at any kind of a rate the cost of my living.
The county has not done that. The state legislature has passed the rent control. And we all have to go by it. We will all have to abide by it. But, you know, the thing is, there are a lot of people out there. There are some people that I've talked to who have said, I'm not going to invest anymore because in California this is like the last nail in the coffin. There are others who have said, Sue, we're trying really hard to figure out how we can make, you know, be compliant and position ourselves so that our business model works and that we can still be there, you know. So, but it does place it'll place caps on how much you can raise the rent. So those who are way below market right now are probably thinking, I need to get up to market, because then when the cap goes on, you can't raise it beyond that until someone moves out and you re-rent it. And they won't be as likely to be motivated to move out if they're getting that below market. So if you have, then on top of that, that rent control has minimum requirements on, you know, the care that you give to the property, and it also has some requirements on if you're evicting someone for no fault, that you have to help them relocate. So you have to financially compensate them to relocate them out of your property. So to me, it's a property rights issue, and I think it reaches too far into our property rights, and I have issue with that. I think that's a property rights issue.
Sue, on the square footage?
Did you have a question? You can go next. Yes.
Did that law pass? I didn't think it
Yes,
passed.
it's going into effect on January. It's going into effect January 1.
Okay, that's the one where, is that the one where you can raise your rent a certain percentage having to do with cost of living and a couple of percent?
Yeah.
Do you have to pay, is that the one where you have to pay them so much to relocate or something?
Yes.
Okay, that's what's going to be in the new law also.
Yes, and I think there were, I can't remember if there were exemption. I think it applied to, there was an application that they had to be 15, it was a property that was 15 years old, so what it, you know, that kind of policy takes away the immediate pain right now, so that we don't really see the effect of it right now until till that plays out. But basically, if you're building, like if you're building an apartment complex now, and it's brand new now, and you're setting, you know, you don't have it doesn't apply to you for 15 years, but it does, you know, impact values over time, and it's going to impact how someone looks at that property if they're buying it in year 12 or whatever. You know what I'm
For
saying?
older properties that are rentals, they're going to have a different set of rules, sort of.
It applies to properties that are 15 years old, and I think there are some exemptions. So what I'll try and do, I don't want to say the wrong thing, and I don't have it all in my head. I'll try and write about it.
Clear in my mind. It seemed to me the age of the property, and that it was attached housing and non-attached, and so on. There was a lot of different sets.
And that's another thing, that right there, all that little stuff that everyone has to figure out and administrate.
Which category you're in.
Yeah. That requires administrative cost to taxpayers, to the county, to manage that and oversee it. So it's definitely easier if you kind of let the market, I think it's easier if you let the markets drive, you know, values.
Absolutely.
And you don't insert government in that, but we're here, we're there now, so.
There's no way trying to break or turn the state law around.
I think we fought it, I think people fought it hard. But we have a super majority in the legislature, and it, you know, and it passed.
It's just
So-
unfortunate because as business people, we can't print money like the state can when they have problems. See, we don't print it, we can't print it. If we got still pay to maintain that property, it's.
No, what we do,
handcuffs and-
what government does is we come back and ask for more money from the taxpayers by way of fees and
We can't,
programs and,
yeah, we can't ask you guys paying the rent to raise it up to pay for this stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
counterproductive for us to build it, to have build the little backyard bungalows to help get more people off the streets.
well, you know, right now, one of the things that I'm working on at the county is I requested that the county look at drawing up some actual architectural plans so that we have a couple of standard drawings that if someone didn't want to pay an architect $10,000 to draw up the plans for their ADU, they could just select one of the standard plans. We're going to have a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom. And they're pretty basic, but how much do you need? If it's really small, you need a kitchen and a bedroom and a living room and a bathroom. So we're putting that together, and that'll come to the board. If the board votes to approve it, it could potentially save people who want to put ADU in their backyard, it could potentially save them $10,000. And then in connection with the new law that's came down by the state, which is creating a lot more, some more flexibilities in that whole ADU picture. It will ease it a little, but at the end of the day, there's a lot, and Tina did a lot of the work on this. It was like we were trying to figure out what does it cost to put an ADU, what's the cost? I'll get you in just a second, Mike. Where is the cost with the ADU? Because you can buy like a little manufactured home for like cottage home for $30,000, but then it costs $50,000 to put it on a permanent foundation and pay for the permits and everything.
All that.
Yeah, and just getting it there costs more than the house itself, and that's the challenge. And then on top of that, you add one of the things that the state changed was you could not require them to have extra parking if they use their garage as the ADU. You can't require them to create more parking because they lost the parking from the garage. You know, there were little things that they did. It was actually good, really great. So that was one good thing that the state did that will help us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the county will get it all situated so that our ordinance is updated. But it's going to ease up a little, but it's still, you know, if you have right now I think 100 to 125 or 40,000 for a little ADU in your backyard, you know, if it's properly permitted and on a foundation. But there are creative thinkers out there working on this, so this is going to unfold and new ideas are coming out. Mike, you were next, I think.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to go pretty fast here. In very, very general terms, I didn't want to discover this, but the permits and everything like that for building a single-family house is roughly $100,000 on top of the cost of building it. Is there any, one, are people understanding this, and two, for an apartment, it wouldn't be $100,000 more, but it would be how much more?
Yeah.
All the fees and costs.
Yeah, I think your point is well taken. We can make all these rules on how we want to move the chess pieces around on the board, and we can change zoning and we can add requirements. But at the end of the day, if someone can't do it and make a profit at it, if they have to pay to do it, they're probably not going to do it, and it's going to slow down housing starts, and that's what's happened in California. They don't start because they can't even get off the ground. It doesn't pencil out, and
Well, and that's
it.
with interest rate really low. If interest rates go up at all, it'll stop.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I believe it's policy driven, and it's happened over time, over a long time, and I don't know how to change the direction it's going in. Our legislature is going in this direction. So how to change that? I can fight it at my level. I'm as a sort of a minority, I would say. But and every now and then I can make a difference. And that's about it.
That's why we voted for you.
So the other thing that happened at the board, and you might see a little bit about this in the paper also, we've been looking at trying to approve an $80 million grant for our CCC. It's our jail. We have 2 jails. One is downtown in the cement tower. The other one's out in Elk Grove, called our CCC. And the state had a grant that we have been working on. We've spent to date about $8 million trying to get this grant situated, and voting on whether or not we could accept this $80 million grant. And I think that I had on feeling it was the right thing to do with taxpayer dollars. The grant had a requirement that if they give us this money, we have to add some programs that are going to reduce recidivism, that will create programs within the jails that will, help them transition out of jail and back into society, that will maybe give them maybe some skills and mental health and so forth, treatment. And those programs were something like $350,000 a year. And then, there's 2 things that the grant satisfied that we have to have. One of the things is we can't just build a jail and then just leave it and not update. We have to maintain the conditions of that jail. And the jails were built a long, long time ago, I think in the 80s. And so it would update some of the facilities, and it would also satisfy some of the requirements of the consent decree, which was the lawsuit that we settled on. And basically, sometimes one person has to have 2 officers out in the yard, because one officer might get killed. So there's, or someone who told on that gang can't go out with that gang. They have to go with the other gang that they didn't tell on. That kind of stuff. So there's a lot of work, and we have this timeline that we have to do, that we've agreed to do it over 6 years. And so accepting 80, I felt like this was a continued item that came back to the board, and we were told that a portion of that would satisfy our need for facilities update, which we're going to have to do either way, and it would also satisfy about $51 million in the consent decree stuff that we've already agreed that we would do. And it was under the impression that this was going to be included in the work that was in that 6-year plan with the consent decree. I don't know why, but the other supervisors did not feel the way I did. I think they felt we were spending too much money for the money we were getting. And so it did not pass. I was the one person that voted for it, and it didn't. My motion didn't carry, and so it was a 2-2 vote. And I'm not sure what will happen now. But the project stopped, and the people who had bid on the project will now go away. It'll have to go out for a new bid, and we'll have to put more money into working with the state to try to. I don't know if it'll come back. We're working on finding that out. So it was a kind of a busy week.
We can have that go up on your Facebook page or something, or on the email blast that we send out, that we could say, if you ever want to have it, because I know it has clerk, that way the clerk gets it to all the board members.
Or you can just
send it
email
to us.
Supervisor Roger Frost at Sac County, and that goes to me and all my staff.
And we can get it to
And
the clerk.
they'll tell you where to send it,
Yeah.
or they'll forward it to the clerk,
Yeah,
if that's easier.
yeah.
Yes.
Are the meetings live cast on one of the cable channels?
Yes, Channel 14,
Channel
and
14.
you'll, that meeting, I think it's it will be Friday, I think. I think that meeting will come on Friday,
You
tomorrow.
can also always watch the meetings live if you have a desktop. I'm not sure if you can do it off your phone or not, but if you go onto the county website, to the board meetings, they'll have this thing that says watch live, and you click on it, and they have a live feed going with sound. So you can hear the whole thing, you can see what the arguments are, you can hear the people that have things to say, and what the votes are.
Charlie?
The only thing that I object to, and I really do, I have free over-the-air TV. I don't pay anybody to watch TV at home. And because of that, I can't watch that. And
Yes, you
out where we are, we do not have high-speed internet for streaming live.
I'm not sure, I checked early, I'm not sure you
They all tell us we do, and we've tried them.
Yeah,
None of them do.
I lived in Wilton, I know exactly what you guys
Do you have Wi-Fi on your phone?
I don't want to talk about it.
Phone.
You have to stand like this.
You can watch it on your phone if you have a smartphone.
I do have a smartphone. And
Not
I
exactly so smart.
You have to stand on one leg with your hand on top of your head sometimes. But let me check, Charlie, and I'll send you an email. I'm not sure if you can go back after the fact. I think after, you can do it later.
Yeah.
So maybe it's if you're somewhere where you have better access for better internet, library or something, then you could watch it, not necessarily live, but later that day or the next day.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay.
Yeah, out in the boonies, we don't have it.
Seriously, I used to walk. I had a little over 6 acres, and I used to have to walk about 3 acres out, stand on this trunk of a tree to get my phone. I had Verizon, and it didn't work.
Question for you. Going back a few steps in regards to if you had a 1,000 square foot little bungalow, is there a cap on what you can regulate per square footage? I mean, for rent, what's the going rate at this point?
Yeah, but they're going to attach how much you can raise your rent based on, there's a calculation based on a certain percentage above. So if you know of anyone who might have a property that would be suitable, that would be a reasonable rent, that's what they're looking for their food bank. Any other questions? Comments? Yes?
So back in February 2019, you worked on sewer within the Manor subdivision. I worked in the neighborhood there, getting signatures. We had meetings at the high school. And some of the neighbors asked me to ask you tonight, is that on the back burner or is that completely shut down?
No, to my knowledge, that they finally got enough signatures. It was like hard. It was really hard to get. I think it was hard to let people know this is like a grant, several $1 million grant that's going to bring a public sewer line into. It was specifically for one area of Rio Linda where they have homes situated very closely together, and they don't have. They have what do you call that? Septic. And so there's a law at the state level, and it's going to be kicking in. There's going to come a time when people are required to hook up to the public sewer because of, the septic won't manage with the groundwater and so forth. And in this area, that was going to be a vulnerable area because it was smaller homes, lower income people who might not have those resources to have all that money. It took a while and Bob was a huge help, and I think Stacy, you helped with that. There were a few people that helped with that. We got the signatures. The grant has been, is being submitted and reviewed, and so I anticipate we'll be hearing on that. I don't think it's on the back burner. I think it's going to be a happy ending. It's just, it's taking time to get that work on that through the state.
Well, I don't know if Matt, I talked to Matt about it, and One of my problems is that some of the owners in the subdivision are uncapping their dry wells and running a submersible down and pumping gray water out of my pasture, which I don't really appreciate because it has potentially E. coli. And I don't want to get them in trouble. I don't want to get a serious problem when they do that. So I go over talk.
Why are they uncapping it?
Why are they uncapping it?
Yeah.
Well, they pump it out. They run a submersible pump down with a hose on it, then they hook it onto a PVC and they run it out in my pasture.
Oh,
And
my.
here I am, it hasn't rained for months, I take my truck out, checking my livestock, and I get stuck. I go down and four-wheel drive.
If you report,
I go talk to them, and I have to be careful, Sue, because if I start making enemies, I'm gonna have dead livestock out there. I mean, very seriously. So this twice has happened now here lately. And what I'm doing, I'm just tearing out the PVC pipe and disconnecting it all, going over and talking to them. And this is not good. But in the dry wells, they clog up with detergents, and we have a severe heartburn problem here. And when the dry wells plug up, they uncap, run the submersible down, run the hose out, and it goes wherever it goes. So it is a serious environmental problem.
I think, our code enforcement, like, if someone did come to us with a problem, we don't report who reported that. It's confidential. So, if someone told, if somebody told me that this was happening at a certain address, and Tina reported it to code enforcement, that's confidential, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, it's anonymous in the sense that it's not anonymous that we have to take the information for the person making the complaint. However, we never divulge who made the complaint. That is always confidential. We don't say.
Your code enforcement people.
It would come from my office. It would come from my office.
So Bob is
If you
next
know
door
that, you
neighbor.
need to tell me which code enforcement officer so I can let their supervisor know. Because it's not to be done.
I have a question about code enforcement.
Okay.
There's a property over on Q Street that I filed a code complaint on because of the probably 30 vehicles. There's, looks to me like a chop shop going on. The cops have been there, I mean, on and on and on. And it's been well over 6 months since I filed the complaint. Code enforcement did come out, they did do something. Not a lot, but they did something. But the property is now just getting right back into the place it was. What do you do?
I would call Tina, get Tina's card tonight. She loves
I didn't
this.
bring any cards, but I'll give you Matt's card.
I usually do that too. Matt's not here, so I'm giving it to Tina.
On the list, on the website.
What I'm thinking, it's kind of like you're talking about Chop Shop, which tells me you think they're stealing cars and something like that. Okay, so
I know that there's probably 10 trailers on the property. They've now gone into the 2 lots on each side of them. There's people living in broken down motorhomes. It's a mess.
yeah, okay, that sounds like code enforcement.
Yeah.
Didn't say that.
Like I said, I didn't bring my cards, I do have Matt's cards, but if you go to our website, Supervisor Frost.
Email.
My email is on there. My
It'll
name
go
is
to
on
all
there,
of us.
my email. And I'm the only other woman on there besides Sue. So, shoot it to me.
Anyway, I've lived here for 30-some years.
Yeah.
There are some places out here, people take very nice care of their places. There's others that are just horrible.
Yeah.
And
I've
I've
seen it.
had code enforcement tell me in the past, what do you expect? It's real enough. Yeah.
Oh, I hate that when people talk about.
That really, that irritates me.
And I would appreciate it to anybody, if you ever hear something like that, I mean,
I want them to do their job. My neighbor who kind of lost his mind,
We
his
need to
place,
send a notice to code enforcement that
he
that's
has over
something
50
they
wheelbarrows,
mentioned
and they say that's okay.
not to do it.
But I'm not is instead, if there is something, if you have a code officer say that kind of comment, please let us know and we can report that to their supervisor, because that's
We will report this, though. We will
Yeah.
say that
Yeah.
that was said by
That has been
someone,
said,
we don't
yes.
know who.
We don't know who, but
Don't say it again.
Yeah.
Tell them not to say it again.
that is not correct.
But I also wanted to say, because there have been times when people reported these like drug houses, and they felt like the police were not doing anything about it, like the sheriff wasn't doing anything, but sometimes it takes time. If they do think it's something, an illegal activity like that, it takes time with undercover operations to actually catch them in the act of doing it.
But what I'm saying is that is entirely different than having these people junk up the property. That's one problem.
Yeah, right.
The
You're
drugs
right.
is
That can be
another
cleaned
problem.
up tomorrow.
Yes.
Right, I get it.
And this is, it seems to me that code enforcement does not want to go that step where they actually do something about it. If you don't clean up your properties, they have the right to lien your property, clean it up, and charge it against your property. Why is that not being done?
I can tell you that we're all different, okay? So there can be someone who has a house that's kind of shabby looking, but it's not against, there's no law that they're breaking.
I'm not talking about a house that's shabby looking.
Okay.
When they had this.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I'm talking about 10 trailers, 20-some cars.
There is a process that code enforcement has to go abide by. Wait, let me finish.
Yes.
Let me finish.
Commercial operation.
There is a process the code has to abide by.
Okay.
By law.
Like give notices.
No, let me finish, please.
They
Let me
block
finish, please.
the case.
Let me finish, please, because it may not be dropped. What they have to do is they first have to go out and inspect and make sure there is an actual violation, because you're thinking a house painted purple is not a violation. And I'm not talking about what you're complaining about, okay? I'm giving you
It's an
very big, silly example. I don't like that neighbor's pink house. I'm sending code over there. Code goes to check it out and says, no, that's fine. Maybe it's not. Code has to notify them in writing that there is a violation and what the violations are, and that they have X amount of time to fix it, and they will come back out and inspect. Now, the owner of the property, and sometimes getting a hold of the owner of the property is a difficult thing, because there's a lot of renters, and it's not the property owner. The property owner can live who knows where. But the property owner has the right to contact code, and it's always encouraged. If you can't get it done within that time, please don't ignore it. Please talk to us, and they will give them more time. So sometimes that time extension keeps going and keeps going and keeps going for whatever the reason is, and they have to keep going out inspecting. Now, if they don't keep in contact with them and they go out to inspect, yes, fees do start getting charged, and the fees will go on to the property. If they're going to go in and clean something up, that gets way beyond, and I'm not even sure if the board has to vote on that. Sometimes because it becomes a dollar cost to the county.
Your code enforcement law says they can do that.
Right, but I'm just saying there's a process, and a lot of people think they call 311, or they go on the app on 311, and they think tomorrow that's all going to be cleaned up. And
It's not always that easy.
That's not going to happen.
It's a process.
There is a process and steps that go. Now, if you see that it's continuing and you're frustrated by that, contact our office, because that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure communication is going on.
I think 6 months is plenty of time.
Yeah, but in that
There's no
6
reason why you couldn't
months,
have contacted us
you
sooner.
could have contacted us every
Getting
month, just
frustrated.
to have us contact them every month. It's sort of like the squeaking wheel, you know? And we don't mind if you contact us. That's what we're there for, right,
Well,
Tina?
that's the thing.
Yeah.
We've had
Charlie.
Yeah, I'd like to go back and touch on the sewer issue. I know that out there in what we call Rancho Alberta, I don't know what the actual name is, but there are already 5 houses that are on city water, but all on septic. And we've been told over the years that septic will come down eventually, and those people will eventually be able to hook up to septic.
Sewer.
Sewer, I'm sorry, sewer, sorry. I went, okay, I'm sorry. they will be able to hook up to the sewers. But I don't understand when that's going to happen or how that's going to happen. And years and years have gone by, and I've heard over the years, yes, we are eventually going to get it, it's going to come down Rio Linda Boulevard, blah, blah, blah. Now I've heard that there's a sewer line coming down Rio Linda Boulevard, but it won't be, the Rancho Alberta will not be hooked up to it.
What's the name of that project, Park Boat?
Linda Manor.
What is it?
Linda
Manor.
Manor subdivision.
Do you know where that is?
No. Where is that, Bob?
It's between West 2nd and West 4th. It was put in 1960.
No, that's way south of where I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about it's way north.
But I think what it comes down to is right now, there are some grants available. It comes down to cost, infrastructure cost. Because like for Linda Manor, it's going to cost something like $9 million to get it from the main road where the sewer is. It has to come all the way down 2 blocks and then go around that subdivision. And the reason they qualify is because they're in a certain income bracket, lower income bracket, their houses are very close together, they're more vulnerable to, you know, the water table, high water table issues with the septic. And so that's why they potentially qualify for this, and I think they will get qualified and get the funding. But I'm told that there will be a point at which everyone has to become compliant with this law that's out there. I don't know. And so the more we can do, the better off we are. Because for some people, even if they don't hook up to the line, just getting it to their street, so when they have to hook up, it's only $5,000 instead of $20,000.
But I guess the concern I have is that my understanding is that this sewer line that is coming south, it's going to start in Sutter County. It's coming south from Sutter down Rio Linda Boulevard, and it's going to, and it's going to go right by Rancho Alberta, but it'll be, nobody in Sacramento County can hook up to it. It's a Sutter County.
I can find out. I can get, can you email me?
Yes.
And just say, Sue, can you give me an update on the sewer, you know, public sewer requirements and timeline or something like that? And then I will go to Regional Santa and find out.
To give you an idea, they were out surveying West 2nd Street from Elkhorn to you 2 weeks ago.
The area I'm concerned with is north of Alberta Road.
Yeah.
Way north.
They were surveying? I don't know if that's...
Well, it just so happens that my boss's daughter is dating one of the guys that does that.
So you know what? Oh, really?
Yeah, he was out there working it 2 weeks ago.
You're in the know.
So, I mean, it's coming.
Yeah. Okay.
And he, like he was telling me, they're going to start doing it in stages.
All right. I think, yes.
What's the county's process on, or policy for, I'm trying to figure out the word I want to use, paving the areas here that we live?
You mean fixing the roads?
No,